Judged by the colour of your skin, but not just black or white. It's the shades in between we're talking about today, and the prejudice that sometimes comes from perhaps not having what some consider the correct colour. This is Roundtable with me, David Foster. It is referred to as colorism. Maybe you're too black or not black enough. You're a shade of brown that for some reason makes you popular or more employable. And this form of racism comes from within your own group.
For people of colour, the shade of their skin can be a massive issue.
The colour of her skin defines her beauty, full stop.
It's resulted in a huge industry.
Some people might say, oh, she's so yellow, she's so fair, she's so beautiful.
With millions across the world trying to lighten their skin, the perception is the closer you are to whiteness, the closer you are to being seen as desirable and beautiful.
Colorism is discrimination or prejudice towards individuals of a darker skin tone, and typically from people from the same racial or ethnic group. In Western countries, it's seen as a lasting relic of slavery, where slave masters would give preferential treatment to lighter-skinned and mixed-race slaves, who were usually the product of the rape of darker-skinned women.
I love white. White is clean. White is pure. White is beautiful.
The skin lightening industry is predicted to be worth $23 billion by 2020. Some of the largest markets are in Southeast Asia, South Asia and Africa.
In Asia, the preference for light skin is linked to class as well as colonialism. But even before Western influence, it's thought that much of Asia's ruling elite were light-skinned, whilst the peasants working out in the fields were dark-skinned. The association between status and lightness, coupled with Western influence, continue to reverberate around the world today.
Although colorism is different from racism, it is influenced by it. And some feel it is an internalization of racist narratives that have led to colorism.
The lighter your complexion and the closer you are to the European pale skin colour, the more acceptable you are to Western consumers, Western audience and Western power brokers.
But the repercussions are far wider than just fashion and beauty products. Those with darker skin say that their skin tone can have an impact when trying to find partners.
A family is looking to get their daughter married or even look for a bride for their sons, nephews or whatever. The very first question is always, is she shundar, or sundar, this idea of her being beautiful being sort of the default, being attached to her being fair. No one is interested in her degrees or, how many languages she speaks or what she's done, what she's accomplished. No one cares.
But can't someone just have a preference for lighter skin?
Well, it's not your preference. It's been a socially constructed beauty reality made for you by your auntie G's, your mother, and all the other women in your life. They've grown up their whole lives with a Hindi film, Hindi-speaking film industry, known as Bollywood, where they're only exposed to fair-skinned women.
While there is widespread awareness regarding racism in all its forms, colorism persists with little opposition. Can such ingrained and inherent discrimination ever be rooted out? Because even without Western influence, colorism will still exist.
Pleased to say that joining us via Skype from Mumbai, we have Nandita Das, Indian actor and social activist, just finished directing her latest film. At the round table, we have Emma Dabry, social historian, broadcaster, Kai Luderot, founder of awareness platform Diversity Matters, and Irene Major, activist and former model who has lightened her skin. Irene, I will ask you in just a moment why you did that. But let's go to India first of all, because it's a country that's known, Nandita, for its caste system, certainly in the past, where the darker you were, the less higher up the social scale you often went. Is colorism still very much in place in India?
Unfortunately, yes. In fact, we don't even call it colorism. It's just an obsession with fairness and it's omnipresent, and it has an interplay with casteism. I don't think because you're dark you're of a certain caste. Usually what happens is casteism was based on the work you did. So those who did sort of the most menial work, the lowest in the hierarchy of things, they ended up being more out in the sun. They ended up being sort of out there, and therefore also were dark traditionally. And the Aryans, the upper caste that came supposedly from Europe, they were the upper caste and they were lighter skinned. So there is an overlapping of caste and color, and sometimes even class, because the lower class somehow don't end up being up on the hierarchy of
And
class.
I just want to ask you this, and with that, does prejudice always come?
Pretty much. I mean, always is a bit of a generalization, but more often than not, I would say. There is a lot more awareness now, and with women sort of in making forays in every field, you sometimes wonder that why are there more whitening creams now than before? So I think it's also to do with consumerism and globalization and many other factors. It's I think, much more complex than we see it. So all the European and American brands have a whitening line. It's not just a South Asian or an Indian phenomenon, obviously.
I was sort of saying to everybody before the programme, I'm possibly the worst person to be sitting here doing this. I'm white, I'm a man, and
Agreed.
you are all aware of the problem. So let me ask you, first of all, Emma, do you recognise what Nandita is saying? And you're very fair-skinned.
I'm mixed. My mum is Irish, so I have very light
Let's be
skin.
fair. You're very fair-skinned.
Yeah.
Do you think you have an advantage over Kai here?
There is definitely a colour hierarchy that operates with people who are more fair-skinned, the lighter you are, but also the more your features conform to a European standard of what's considered beautiful. So I think with colorism, it has got to do with the colour of your skin, but it's more complex than that. It's also got to do with your proximity to looking African. But absolutely, lighter-skinned people have been empirically shown in many different contexts to have advantages over darker-skinned people, be that opportunities or how they're treated within certain institutions, but also just the reaction that you often get within black communities. But I would just like to say, I don't think you can necessarily conflate colorism in India, where it's not even called colorism, with what happens in African and black diaspora settings. Within those settings, it's a direct result of colonialism and slavery. And I think it's interesting that you, as a white man, are completely unaware of the history, as you've kind of stated.
Well, I'm not
yourself.
saying I'm unaware of it. I'm simply saying that I'm perhaps I have never experienced it.
You've never.
Therefore, I'm not necessarily in a position to sort of say, well, what about this? What about that? Because I don't know.
But that's just what I'd like to say is one of the kind of could be perceived as one of the privileges of whiteness. So, for instance, as a black person, you have these systems that were kind of imposed upon you. You have no choice but to know about them. And then there's other people whose cultures have been involved in the process of these things, but they're completely ignorant of it, and that's a privilege.
Can let me ask you, and I'm sorry, it does almost sound like we're objectifying you by sort of saying, oh, because of this, because of African, because of heritage, etc., etc. And tell me if I'm saying the wrong thing. Please do. But do you recognise what these other two have said so far?
Absolutely, and that it took quite a bit of process to come to that point. So I grew up in a family where my sister was quite light-skinned, and I actually just remember just being referred to as Melody's sister, like no one kind of knew my name. And I just associated her as being popular because she was light-skinned and so therefore she was beautiful. But at the same time, I didn't know that there was something called colorism. And it's only through like maybe my sort of student activism within university, becoming more aware, or what we say woke, to sort of like these systems that we are in, and racism is part of that. And I understand that there is a difference between colorism and racism, but they do have they do stem from the same place. And I think it's very important that we do acknowledge that. Me personally, I just happen to also just be a confident black woman, and I love the skin that I'm in, so I don't let that affect me. But I can't also deny, from my sense of privilege in a way, that other women who are as dark as myself don't also face barriers because of their skin complexion.
Irene, let's bring you in at this point, because I'd like you to explain to everybody else at this table and also in Mumbai why you feel it necessary to bleach your skin, because you were a very, very dark colour once.
Yes, I was, and very successful then as well.
As a model?
So when it comes back to, first of all, I'm against all kind of discrimination. To me, these things shouldn't exist in a modern day and age. And yeah, I was a model, even darker than you, done really well. And then maybe 10 years ago, after, actually me talking about it, adult chicken pox, I decided to, even out my skin tone. And the solution, as most would know, you can easily obtain that. Just like
so it
that
wasn't
once you
a matter of you feeling that you were too black, if I could
No,
put it that
not
way.
at
It's just
all.
your skin changed and you wanted to even it out. But now do you feel you have advantages?
No, no, it has nothing to do with my social life or, no, my life is still the
Are
same.
you treated differently?
No, because I'm still married to the same guy for 20 years, so I can't really tell you whether it's a better place to be. I can just tell you it's a choice that I've decided to make for myself, and I like what I see. It's like dyeing, bleaching your hair or, tanning or things like that. It's just a choice in a free world.
Not for me to ask the questions, you guys ask Irene the questions. Got anything to say?
Well, I just want to also point out that I think that's also really important to realise that there are people who are bleaching their skin because of other reasons to Irene, but because maybe they actually do feel that being lighter is better. And I think that's what we should sort of focus on rather than Irene bleaching because of chickenpox.
Okay, well, let me ask you,
Well,
do you feel lighter?
I actually don't want to use chickenpox as an excuse.
Do you feel lighter is better?
So if you look at my colour, or you look here, do you have a preference?
No, I have no preference because my daughters look exactly like you, for example. Do you know there's some part of the country, like South Africa, where you still find your own
Your husband's a white
identity.
Canadian.
Yes, you see what I mean? So we come in a world where we're very judgmental, over anything, and I think it's very hypocritical to sit and judge something, a decision. I mean, and what I can't stand is the fact that colorism will come, like you say, you were unaware of that. Me too. I didn't even know colorism existed because, like I said, I've been in this country. Yes, I'm black, but that's not what defines me. I've done everything I had to do. I had success. There were casting I used to go to, 50 black girl, and then one person will get the job. It's always been a struggle, for all kind. People will say to me, the lighter you have, the more work you get. Everybody struggle.
Mm-hmm. You don't think it's the case, Nandita? Do you think the lighter you are, the more work you get?
Well, it's definitely one of the factors. I don't think one can just say that the lighter you are, you get more work. But it has been proven that if two people have the same talent and one is lighter and, conforms to the idea of beauty, and beauty has been standardized now, not just within a particular country, but globally, that you have to be thin, you have to be as tall as you, whatever the measurements are, this is how your waist should be, this is how your skin color should be. So it definitely is an advantage. And I think it finally boils down to it's a choice. And I respect the fact that Irene said this was my choice. And we all have to work, whatever the choice may be. Like, do women have to work? What if someone wants to be a stay-at-home mother? I mean, as long as she's making that choice. But sometimes I feel that what we think is a choice, is it really a choice? Or are we in some way being impacted by the perceptions, by what's expected of us, of what looks right? So sometimes I'm not so sure if it's really a choice. And Irene,
To me, it's a choice.
Yes,
it's
so
definitely a choice. Like, I had success darker. I'm not probably going to just be here and say, yes, I had to do it because then I have better opportunity. Maybe, you have to afford it too. I mean, to be able to lighten your skin is something.
Do you do it for yourself?
Oh, well, you go, Harley Street, any dermatologist, will help you with that. And it's very expensive as well. It's not, under-the-counter product, are cheap, but there are the deadly matters, out there. So to me, maybe more money, the more money I had, the more I could afford it.
Jump in there, because I've got a question, but I'd much rather you talk amongst yourselves.
Okay, it's a little bit different. I've obviously never...
Nandita, with you in a sec.
I've obviously never lightened because my skin is so light. I would actually like to be darker, and I desperately need a tan.
Oh dear.
Well, you can go darker.
No, but I can kind of relate it. I can relate it to my hair, in that I have natural Afro textured hair, and for a really long time I detested that, because I think hair texture also operates within this space of beauty standards and colorism. And I used to have my hair like yours is now, but
My hair is a wig.
Yeah, I know. So I used to wear weaves, wigs.
Wear a wig. Choice.
Funnily enough, the other night I was actually wearing like a pink and blonde wig, and I think wigs are a fun thing to play with. But I've come to a stage now where I can be on TV with my hair like this, and I can also have fun with the weave. Whereas in the past, I could not. I would rather have died than for anybody to see my hair looking like
this.
You
make a statement with your hair, don't you, Kai?
And I desperately wanted to have long, straight blonde hair, so I wore the weaves, and that was 100% because for me, because I was growing up in Ireland, that was the beauty standard, and I felt under pressure to look like that, and I had to decolonize my aesthetic to be able to accept and appreciate my African features.
And just to add to that, I think it also works the other way around as well. So there are black women who are being discriminated against because they're wearing their hair natural, and so it's all right for us to be confident within ourselves, but it also needs to be the other way around, that also these work systems are also acknowledging that our hair grows upwards, a lot of us, rather than downwards, a straight sort of conformed way to normal. It's not my hair, but this is Afro textured hair, and whether it's my hair or not, I don't think that's actually the difference. I'm not wearing a straight European
and also in traditional African society, people always played with extensions.
That's what we
and
do. It's part of a culture. We cornrow our hair with extensions. It's called protective styling. So it is a choice. I'm not saying it's not a choice.
It's part of black hairstyling
the point
culture.
that
It's a choice.
Yeah,
Beautiful eyes too.
Nandita, don't feel we've forgotten about you. You can jump in at any time as well.
The point, sorry, I just want to make this point really quickly.
Beautiful
that,
eyes as well.
After Kai.
Being African?
I'm sorry, if you just let me make my point, please.
It's a choice. You look beautiful, by the way, either way.
Thank you very much for your compliment. But as I was saying, that it's really important that the structures that are there that are oppressing people of colour, particularly women who wear their hair natural, those also need to be broken down. It's no good me just being a confident black woman who's wearing this Afro kinky hair and being confident within myself, but I go for a job and they're actually like, they have their biases towards me because having kinky hair is not part of the formation of being professional or
dress code.
Thank you. And that's all I just want to say. Of course, it's a choice, but it needs to also be.
It's a choice.
We have to look at
Nandita, please jump in. They're obviously very talkative at this table.
No, of course, when you're physically there, it's so much more exciting. What I started supporting a campaign called Dark is Beautiful. It was an organization called Women of Worth, and they approached me in 2013. And they said, would you give us a quote? And like you support many other things that you believe in but are not really engaged with, I gave a quote in support of it. And I was shocked how it went viral, and I suddenly became the face of that campaign by default. A lot of people think it's my campaign. If it was mine, I would have called it Just Be Natural. I have met hordes of young girls, women and young girls, who have completely sort of become very submissive, have killed all their talents, feel they cannot explore different opportunities because that's the only thing they identify with. And there are so many words in the Indian languages, there are words used in songs, which basically says that dark is ugly and fairness is beautiful. Absolutely. So what it does to their self-esteem is almost dangerous. So before that, I used to be working on sexual abuse, on issues of women, of domestic violence. And I, like many of you, my parents didn't put this complex in my head. So I thought, well, it is an issue, it's a standalone issue. How can that define your life? Why should the color of skin matter so much in a country that's 90% my color? And yet, when I joined the campaign, I was horrified to hear some of the stories where people were ready to commit suicide because of the color of their skin.
Okay.
3-year-olds would come crying about it. So it definitely is a huge standalone issue. I'm glad that you're doing it.
We'll get you to promote that campaign again towards the end of the programme. Emma wants to jump in, and then I'd like to ask a question.
I just think it's interesting as well that we're all women, and I think it's really important to point out the way colorism is gendered as well, and how it affects and positions women very differently to how it does men. And I think certainly within the way femininity has been constructed and imposed on people of colour, ideas about femininity. I know that certainly because the way because of the way blackness has been constructed, it's been associated with masculine features. So that impacts badly on darker-skinned black women because they're associated with masculinity. The only way that that masculinity can be kind of tempered, as it were, is this detour through whiteness. So you have light-skinned women with long hair and these kind of features that are more associated with femininity because of the way blackness and whiteness are constructed.
Can I just ask a question? One of the things that I was told at the beginning of this is that it was, not necessarily by you, but this is more about discrimination within
the
ethnic communities rather than from without, rather than from a white
from within the community.
It's from within, it is from within the community because it's something that was introduced and sustained through slavery for over 500 years, and then in the continent through colonialism, and now is like further entrenched through globalization.
So how do you change it then? How do you change it if it's within your own community?
Well, it's deeply, deeply entrenched.
Well, I was
talking about it.
I was sitting the other day with the one of the anthropologists at Oxford University, for example. He studied human, world peace. And he said to me, what he's noticed that the community let us down. It's people who believe in community that tend to not go anywhere or expand their horizon. And that's what I see with this thing. I'm sitting here not because I have nothing to do. Simply, that's not what I want to be recognized for, the girl who lighten up or bleach or something. I do greater things. I campaign. I have charities around the world. But I feel our community tend to be a bit, behind sometime in life. I'm sorry, because this topic became so big. Why are we even talking about colorism nowadays?
I have this reality.
Let's ask Kai. Why?
It's a reality, and the thing is, we can brush. It's like with racism
and also,
in the workplace.
James said the black community is behind.
Well, that's what I get. I'm sorry, that's what I get.
I can't even tolerate that for a moment.
But
I will say that we've been told that beauty is a certain thing. We've all been told that beauty is a certain thing, and it's something that white people.
You don't believe beauty is in the eye of the beholder?
Oh, come on.
No, seriously.
Of course, beauty is subjective, but we are told that it is a certain thing. And there's a very powerful message coming at us from all angles, reinforcing that's a certain thing. And femininity is so related to certain features that are not necessarily kind of, say, very typical, like West African features in the way that beauty has been constructed.
Allow me, as the one person who isn't actually affected by any of this, to ask two rather distant people in terms of geography a rather impertinent question. To you in a minute, Nandita. Kai, to you first. Have you ever wished that you were lighter skinned?
When I was younger.
As you said, because of your sister?
Because of my sister.
As a grown-up?
As a grown-up, no. And actually, so online I see a lot of black girls saying that, they're paid a compliment by people saying oh, you're pretty for a black girl. To be honest, I've never experienced that.
Who says that?
People say that, but I've
black
never
people or white people?
Possibly more from our black community. But what I would
I've had white people say that to me growing up. That was quite typical. That was quite typical in Ireland. They were like, "Yeah, I wouldn't usually go for a black girl, but I'd make the exception for you."
Yes, I know, but you didn't end up seeing that person for very long. I wouldn't imagine.
But it happened more times.
And it does happen. But the point is that for me, I've had it in other ways. So I've been told.
How do you educate the black community if that's where most of it's coming from?
Well, you stand for yourself, and then you stand for your ground. If it's a personal choice, you go for it. I have 6 children, and the 7th one on the way, and my husband is white, so they're mixed race. I don't remind them they're either black or white. I think that's how you educate the future.
Yeah,
I'm very well educated,
when you see that you have white in you too.
I do have white in me too.
You can try.
Yeah, I would try and jump.
So you should
I'm not half white.
You can't call yourself black and that's the point. To me, I'm not color.
My thing is that actually,
yeah, but in South Africa, you still have an issue with that too. So that's the thing.
Irene, please, just a sec.
These topics actually have to be discussed more because, as you can see, there is a lot that comes out of it, and it is a heated topic, but it's also a reality for many people, and you have different viewpoints. But I think that brushing it under the carpet is not the way to move forward, and that's what happens in our society with racism, particularly in the workplace. It's just easy to just brush it under the carpet, pretend that, we celebrate diversity, but we don't want to address race matters specifically. And then we have all these issues that are now bubbling up. in terms of inclusion of people of colour in the workplace.
Black communities don't exist in some vacuum where they're operating like in complete isolation to wider social processes. And if you think about things like representation, in the few instances where you do see black women given opportunities, they tend to be light-skinned or mixed race or have good hair or have whatever features. So something like Black Panther, now we're seeing something like a very mainstream film. I don't think this has ever happened in Hollywood before, where we see the main love interest as a dark-skinned African woman with short, natural hair represented as
well, we haven't got time to wonder whether that is the case, but it's certainly a rarity. Nandita, with your campaign, and you can give it a plug, please, on this programme, but let me ask you the same question I asked Kai. As an adult woman, have you ever been made to feel that you should wish for a lighter skin?
No, but it's easy for me to say that all of us have identities other than our color of skin, a color of our skin. So therefore, we can rely on our other talents or our work, whatever else we have been identified as. But, you know, what about all those women who don't have anything, so to say, you know, something that's extraordinary? You have to be almost extraordinary if you are darker skinned.
Look, I'm a privileged white man who's never encountered anything like this, both in terms of gender and in terms of skin colour, but I found it absolutely fascinating and at the same time absolutely horrifying. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on Round Table. Nandita, thank you in Mumbai, and thank you for watching. Hope to have your company next time. Bye-bye.